Meeting for March 25th will come to order, please. Roll call.
Commissioner Abraham?
Present.
Commissioner Galt?
Present.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Mayor Kaler?
Present. Tonight we have Tommy Tucker. He's the pastor for Caring and Senior Adult Ministries at First Baptist Church to do our invocation. Welcome.
Thank you. Can we pray? Father, we thank you. We thank you for so many gifts. Among them, Father, we thank you for the gift of our city. We even thank you, Father, for its problems and troubles. May they become opportunities. May they become strengths instead of weaknesses. And may we, as your citizens, be agents for your use and in your hands to do that. We thank you, Father, for our commission. May your wisdom and guidance be upon them, and may they follow closely in listening to you and seeking to find ways in which they can better care for all of the programs, all of the people, and all of the policies that come their way. Bless us this evening in Jesus' name. Amen.
And we have Caroline Miners here tonight. She's a Paducah Tillman High School sophomore. Welcome. Thank you for helping us.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to its republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Manager, are there any additions or deletions?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we have a report tonight on the 911 operational study. Welcome, Chief Kyle.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Okay. What you're going to get tonight is a final report from a study that we commissioned a few months ago. The city and county went together to do this as a result of the current conditions that we have at the 911 Center. We're currently without a director, and the board over the last few months also, leading up to this, has identified that we have some needs that we need to address and the levels of service that need to be provided, and that it was a good time for us to just do an overall assessment of our operation, do an inside look at how our operations run, the efficiencies of it, and to see what we might need to change and look forward to in the future. As a result of that, we commissioned Almont Associates to do that study. We gave them a set of parameters to look at for the study, which Stuart will talk about here in just a minute. And they have compiled that final report. Let you know that earlier today the board got to hear the report for the first time. And then when we leave here tonight, we're going straight to the county commission for them to hear it also at that time. Once he's done, I'll come back to you to talk to you for just a few minutes. I think there's some actions that we'll need from both of our governing groups going forward, and I'd like to talk for just a minute about that once he's completed the report. With that, I'd like to introduce Stuart McElhaney. He is the consultant, one of the lead consultant that worked on the project for Almont Associates, and happens to be a fire chief in his other life, and assistant city or county administrator, I think, where he gets to stay busy a whole lot of the time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stuart.
Thank you, Chief Kyle. Let me see. What did we? Oh. And not a technical guy. Let's get one where all lights. Apologize, you guys have to crane your necks a little bit. Madam Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. City Manager, thank you all very much for inviting Almont Associates to participate in this. We had an enjoyable time. Staff was very, very helpful and forthcoming, and this is a culmination of a site visit back in early December, multiple phone calls, and a review of quite a bit of data on the communications center. So with that, I'll try to keep it to about 20 minutes, although this is pretty exciting material. And if I drone on a bit, please stop me and ask questions at any point during there. Just go ahead and shout out. As Chief Kyle mentioned, we kind of have a little bit of background here. We'll go over this and then kind of get into some of the observations and then the recommendations of the study. As you all probably know, the city and the county entered into an interlocal agreement a long time ago, in 1991, and to provide for combined or consolidated 911 emergency communications. It's been updated several times, and now it's on a year-to-year renewal. There's an 11-member board that actually has got pretty wide latitude in the interlocal agreement, and it pretty much administers all aspects of the 911 service at this point. The center is the primary public safety answering point in McCracken County, and also serves as the, I don't know why it's doing that, and also serves as the county's 911 addressing system. The center dispatches all public safety entities in McCracken County with the exception of Mercy Regional Ambulance, which it's a one-button transfer from the your center to Mercy. The center staffed 24/7. There are 22 full-time equivalent positions, 17 of which are on shift. We were actually hired through an RFP process to develop recommendations. They're threefold. One is to look at the operational design and organizational development, including staffing models. 2, look at the governance of the communication center. And 3, look at technology and information exchange. And if there was anything else that we came up with, we would look at that as well. As I mentioned, we made several site visits back in December, so it's about a 3-month process that culminates in the actual presentations today. And I believe, have you all gotten copies yet? I know we've distributed those to staff and the board got them. This is just a copy of the presentation, but there's a detailed report, I think.
I don't believe they have. You have bound copies for everybody,
Okay.
don't you?
I think, Chief Kyle, we've got. That gives a lot more detail. This is just an overview presentation. What I'd like to cover initially is the site interviews and discussions with all the board members, of which one of your commissioners, Ms. Galt, is on the board, and so we got some input. There's an elected member from both the City Commission and the Fiscal Court. So we'll summarize their results. Board members had significant concerns and recommendations covering 4 major areas having to do with the communications center. Those areas were management and personnel issues, staffing itself, in other words, how many staff we have, governance, and lastly, facilities and infrastructure. Looking at the management and personnel issues first, there was a real concern about the legal protection and liability issues for the parties involved due to adverse employee actions or actions as a result of technical mistakes and that sort of thing. It's not real clear what this entity really is, although discussions with Mr. Pedersen, it kind of sounds like they really are city employees, and they kind of have that feel. The city cuts the payroll checks, the city processes HR, and those kinds of things. So it kind of looks like they're city employees, but that was an issue. The organization appears to be too hierarchical for its size. There's a lot of management structure in there, and it looks like that can be carved a little bit. Access to the center floor, there's too much interaction, too many people coming in and out bothering the telecommunicators. Training appears to be a real issue that's lacking in terms of actual written protocols and training to those protocols. That was a concern that many people had. Pay and benefits seems to be very good, particularly with respect to other agencies, and there seemed to be a lack of sensitivity to any constructive criticism provided by those entities that were dispatched by the center. A real big issue that probably is something for you all to think about is there doesn't seem to be much in the way of strategic focus or planning, no long-range planning for the center in terms of, what kinds of capital equipment needs are we going to have out there, how are we going to fund it, those sorts of things. So that was one of the things that we looked at when we went through this study. From a staffing perspective, there's a mixed opinion on are we overstaffed, appropriately staffed, or understaffed. The majority seem to feel like streamlining the operation itself and utilizing the existing resources would probably, with improved protocols, provide any staffing that we needed. There was also consensus that merger with Mercy EMS Dispatch would probably be a positive step. We did pursue that and talk to Mr. Locke with Mercy EMS, and he was definitely amenable to you all moving forward, looking at consolidating with EMS dispatch. As far as governance, there was a slight majority of the board that felt that the 11-member board is really too large and unwieldy to effectively manage the operation. The main reason that it seems to be law enforcement heavy is the access to the law enforcement information network, or LINK, for Kentucky, and the NCIC database. Several of the elected officials, including Ms. Galt, and I'm kind of referring to you, so feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm trying to kind of express what I thought I heard folks say. You guys seem to be concerned, or express concern, for the local economy and also, or center funding, and also thinking about the citizens that the center is serving rather than just the agencies that are providing that service. So that was kind of a unique perspective that we heard. Also, we heard that elected officials did not feel that they were as informed about the needs of the center and proper funding required to operate the center effectively over the long term. And so that's one of the things that we tried to address in this study, is maybe how you might look at that going forward, and be, at least through your city manager, be a little bit more involved, or at least understanding of what the needs were. Facilities and infrastructure, you all have probably seen the building. Most of the board felt that the current building is really inadequate for long-term use, and it's pretty much outgrown its usefulness, or it's very close to the end of its life. At a minimum, folks felt like the current building needed some modifications, such as lighting, fenced and secure parking, and new carpet and paint and so on. Although, given that it's kind of at the end of its useful life, you probably don't want to be spending a whole lot of money on it. The CAD system, the computer-aided dispatch system itself, is several generations old, and that's one of the problems that the telecommunicators have, is it's just not an efficient system. That system probably needs to be upgraded to a current web-based system. It can be the same, the HTE system that they currently have now, but it needs to be upgraded. Let's look a little bit at the center workload, and we kind of looked at data from the center over a 5-year period, 2007 to 2012. And I apologize, you can't read this really well, but I'll kind of show you what it is. This is all of these is going to be years going across the bottom, so it's 2007 on the left-hand side, going out to 2012 here, and then this is call volume in tens of thousands going this way. The red up here, those are total incoming phone calls to the communication center. You can see that's kind of either flat or decreasing a little bit, and that's primarily driven by the non-emergency calls coming into the center. They really are showing a decrease through time, whereas the E-911 calls, emergency calls, are slightly increasing through time. This just gives you an idea of how the calls come in during time of day. This is midnight to midnight, so this would be about 5 o'clock in the morning. This is about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You can see that the call volume drops off very significantly in the wee hours of the morning and picks up during the day. That's a very common trend around the United States. You see that pretty much in anything to do with emergency services. Call volume does the same thing, which is shown on this chart right here. This is actually call volume for 2 separate months, the month of June and the month of August in 2013. And you can see they drop off very significantly in the wee hours of the morning and then pick up from about 8 to 8. This red line here is actually average duration of calls. It's about 30 minutes for a call. So for the same time period, if you look at the overall 911 call volume, this is total 911 calls here in green. That's increasing through time. And this is cellular 911 calls versus landline 911 calls. So you can see the landline 911 calls pretty much are driving that trend, and they're continuing to become more and more the majority of the calls. So that means the landlines, and that's how you all have a fee on your landlines. They're becoming less and less and less. So you can raise the fee, but it doesn't matter because it's a diminishing revenue source. That'll become important later. This is actually represents the 911 incidents. This is total 911 calls here. This is 911 dispatched incidents. They're increasing slightly through time. This is the majority of the incidents logged by the communications center. It's pretty much flat. These are what are called self-dispatches. What that means is that, and it's primarily law enforcement, that would be like a policeman's driving down the road, he wants to do a license check, or he wants to do a well-being check or something like that. It's not a call that's originating by somebody calling 911 and then the dispatcher having to dispatch that call. So in general, the workload seems to be, it's less for that kind of a call than it is for a 911 call. Okay, so this is actually total incidents dispatched, and these are the red again is the self-dispatch. This is Paducah Police in blue here, slightly increasing through time, and this is McCracken Sheriff slightly decreasing through time. And that becomes important when you look at how the center is actually funded, because you use the split of calls to do that. This represents total city dispatches increasing through time, and here's total county dispatches decreasing through time. And again, those are driven primarily by the law enforcement calls. Those are the vast majority of calls that the center receives. If you look at the other types of calls that are dispatched by the center, this is Paducah Fire here in blue, definitely increasing through time. This is county animal control, relatively flat, but about the same magnitude as city fire. This is county fire, increasing slightly through time. This is emergency management and other calls down here. It's an order of magnitude different. The law enforcement calls are in the tens of thousands versus the fire and other, which are in the thousands. So really, law enforcement is what's driving the workload in the communications center. But just to bear in mind, one of our recommendations is totally eliminate the dispatching for county animal control. Reason being, that's very unusual that an E-911 center will actually dispatch animal control. This is the current staffing that you have in the communications center. There are 22 full-time equivalent positions, and this chart at the bottom here is kind of our best guess as to how they're distributed throughout the day. This is calls for June and August of 2013 through time of day, so you can see them decrease in the wee hours of the morning and increase between about 8 in the morning and about 8 in the afternoon. So that's call volume through the day on the left-hand side, and this is number of staff over here. The dark blue represents what they call supervisors or assistant supervisors, and the light blue are telecommunicators. So basically what you're looking at here is the minimum staffing that you have is 3 for about 12 hours of the day, and it gets up to as many as 7 at peak hours during the day. And that's part of the issue is the staffing that they have right now, they're not necessarily staffing them in the most effective manner to cover for sick and vacation coverage and training and those sorts of things. One of the things that's probably of more concern to you all is what's going on with the financing, since you are one of the two financial partners in the communications center. This represents total revenue through time, so you can see there's definitely a decrease in the total revenue to the center, and that's revenue that you get from either your charge that you put on the landline that you do locally, or the CMRS money that comes from the state, the commercial mobile radio service or cellular charges. That's this red down here. That's increasing through time because you get more cell calls, and then your landline is decreasing through time. So that's what's driving the drop in revenue, is the decrease in the landline revenue. This represents, this is the total expenditures. You can see those are increasing pretty significantly through time, and this is back to 2004. Here's the city and county split, and then this is your total revenue here, decreasing through time. So the city portion of that is increasing at a little bit higher rate than the county portion in red here.
But the gap at the top two is widening, and that's the important point between the revenue and the expenditures.
Yeah, this is. Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. You can see how rapidly this total expenditure of the center is increasing, and you can see your revenue that is decreasing through time there, and it's getting worse and worse. And we'll see this in a minute. We did an economic model, but if nothing changes, I won't say it's a train wreck getting ready to happen, but it's something that you all financially really need to be concerned about. And one of our concerns with the board is that the way the governance is working right now is they're not really kind of holding that organization accountable for what's happening here. And yet you're the ones, you and the county fiscal court, are responsible for making up the funding difference. This is almost the same thing. This is your expenditures increasing through time, total expenditures. It's the same trend as up here. But what I wanted to show you here is the green is your revenue, again, decreasing. This blue represents 50% of the operating cost of the communications center, so half of this cost here. The reason that I show that 50% is because by interlocal agreement, If the funding that you receive from the state in your landline charge drops below 50% of the expenditures in any given year, you are supposed to increase your charges on the landline. Well, in 2007, you can see those lines crossed. That's about 2007. Well, if it come, there it is. That's about 2007. Those lines crossed. So you've actually been less than 50% funded from that point forward. And it's, as you can see, that that gap's going to get wider and wider. So that has an impact on you as partners funding this operation. This just gives you a quick shot of what's actually happening over the last 5 years. This is, again, 2009. These are audited numbers up through the adopted for fiscal 2014. So you can see this is the total center expenditures, and they're increasing at a pretty good clip here. And that's driven primarily by, this is your total personnel cost right here. This just shows salaries, but this is salaries and benefits. This is your operating expenses. They're going up a little bit, but not much. So it's really, the trend is driven by the increase in your personnel costs. Okay, so this ugly thing here is an Excel spreadsheet which we put together. It's basically an economic model for 5 years, and I'm not going to get into the detail. Just suffice it to say that the inputs that we used are the trends we've seen through time of increasing call volume, difference between city and county. That goes into the formula in the interlocal agreement that tells you how to fund this thing, tells you what your share is and what the county share is. All we've done here with this model is, absent any change in revenue, just looking at the trends that we've had in the past, we wanted to see what is the partner share going to look like in year 1 through 5 as you move your way out, just so you can kind of see what you're faced with. And that's this chart right here. This is really the important thing to take away from the economic model, if it'll stay up there. This is the base year. This is the current fiscal year. The red line represents the current fiscal year, and then years 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, what happens to the city contribution. And here's years 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what happens to the county contribution through time if nothing changes. If your expenditures keep going up the way they've been going up, if the revenue declines the way it has been. And let's see. Why that keeps blinking on us. I can't even read that with my glasses on. So basically, just for your reference, the base year, which is the current fiscal year, you're looking at a little over $500,000 for the city contribution. By the end of the 5-year period, you'll be about $850,000. Again, if no changes are made to the current operations and if the revenue continues to do what it did or what it's been doing. The county contribution, a little under $400,000, will go up to about $560,000. So getting to the recommendations that Almont has made following what we found, let's look at governance first. While we believe that the board is a collegial organization and it seems to work well together, it does appear to be too large to be completely effective. It certainly doesn't seem to be managing the expenditures or looking at long-range planning and that sort of a thing. We would recommend reducing the size of the board from 11 to somewhere around 7 members. You do need to keep a law enforcement majority, but you can still do that with 4 of them being law enforcement on there. And we really believe that for effective management control, the center should actually become a department of either the city or the county. And we would recommend it becoming a department of the city for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that you are already, as the city, providing many support functions. As I mentioned earlier, you're doing the payroll, you're processing all the bills. When employees are hired in the center, they're actually processed through the Human Resources Department. And I think in discussions with the city manager, it sounds very similar to some other kinds of partnerships that you've had before. So, and in addition, in discussions with some of the board members, they already felt like, well, it's kind of functioning as a city department anyway. But really, the bottom line is, there is not, you can't really put your finger on who's really responsible for managing this thing and looking at and tracking and trying to control expenditures through time or planning long term for where are we going, what do we need, and how are we going to fund it. So we really feel like, if it reports either to the city manager or to some person in the county, then that's going to be a more effective way to be able to get a handle on all that. And again, for the various reasons that we mentioned, we feel it should be the city. Of course, with that, the interlocal agreement should be revised. It probably needs to be revised anyway, and we would recommend that it would reflect day-to-day operations of the center and center management by a director who reports directly to the city manager. The board itself then, which would still be in existence under the interlocal, would focus more on long-range planning and support of each agency's specific technical needs and interaction. In other words, the agencies that are dispatched by the comm center are customers of the comm center. They need to focus on what are the protocols that we need in place to support us as agencies using this, and in turn support the citizens who we're responding to. They really don't need to be, and they really haven't been able to focus on managing the costs, developing budgets, planning long range. Does that make sense? We think that's a pretty key recommendation there. Probably ought to have a budget subcommittee comprised of the finance and budget staff for each of the funding partners, or maybe if there's a third there as well, and probably the department head, and that subcommittee should prepare your annual budget. It still has to be, it's still subject to appropriation by both of the boards of the funding partners. The current funding formula is fairly, there's a word I like to use called tortuous, which means it's like a pretzel. And it seems to be working, but it's very convoluted, and I think you could probably look at changing that, particularly if you look at some alternative funding sources or mechanisms. From a management personnel issues perspective, the interlocal actually requires you to have a 12% contingency each year with your budget, and there's no reserve at all set aside for capital funding. And that just shows you why, because we have computer issues. But I think you probably can get by with not having 12%. You could probably go with more like a 5%, and what you might could do is then dedicate the rest of that to a capital reserve and then add to that. But that's a real issue that you've got right now, is there is no capital funding mechanism in your current budget, and there hasn't been any capital funded for quite a while. The interlocal, as we mentioned, requires a landline fee increase when the revenue becomes less than 50%, which was met in 2011. This should be revisited. Maybe if you look at funding alternatives, that might could go away altogether. You have quite a bit of flexibility in funding local services, and in particular funding 911 services. And there is an alternative that we found in one of the Kentucky counties, and that is the use of a per parcel fee. They actually have a consolidated, it's with a K. Yeah, it escapes me now. Kenton County. Sorry about that. Kenton County actually has a consolidated E-911 Center, and they use a non-ad valorem per parcel assessment to fund their entire center operation. We're not necessarily recommending you do that, but it's certainly something that is out there that you could look at, particularly since your funding resources are actually down below what they should be for 50% at this point by your interlocal. We actually presented two staffing or organizational models which would provide for better staff supervision and stability, and we also recommend the need for standardized protocols and staff training. You got to get the protocols in place first, and then you have to train the staff to execute those protocols, and that's where we're recommending that the board really focus on that rather than focus on the long-range planning and budgeting and so on. So that's a real need that the center has, because right now they really don't have a standardized set of protocols that they can dispatch different agencies on. Integration with Mercy Regional or Mercy EMS Dispatch would make a one-time CMRS grant of $100,000 available. What they say is that the state has the CMRS funding, and if you take two 911 centers and you consolidate them, you get a one-time $100,000. They just give it to you to help with that consolidation. So that would be a funding stream that would be available for you at one time. They also do direct and matching grant programs, which you could apply for as well. We were really concerned about any kind of recurring funding for capital replacement. We think that the center is probably heavy on management, so we're recommending eliminating the assistant director position. That's about an $80,000 recurring expenditure each year. That could be then applied to a capital replacement program. Additionally, given these models, you've got about a $50,000 overtime budget right now. We feel like that could be reduced in Model 1 and possibly even eliminated in Model 2. So that would give you, if you didn't take that away, you could actually use that and add that to your capital funding stream. Okay, we're still searching here. There we go. Okay. Staffing and organizational models. The two models, again, as I mentioned, we looked at eliminating the assistant director, and we're also recommending that dispatching of county animal services should be discontinued. That's fairly typically handled by the individual departments themselves, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then an on-call officer would handle that through a paging service or a pager after hours rather than a communication center. Both models that we presented for you streamline staff and provide extra personnel to cover sick and vacation shifts, as well as provide some more depth for training opportunities, because that's one of the problems they have right now is you can't take people off the floor to send them to training. In both models, we actually change the schedule that they work. Right now, they're working varied 4 10-hour days as shifts, and they kind of move them around. What we're recommending is that we go to 4 platoons, 4 groups of people. They would work 12-hour shifts. We would have 2 day shifts and 2 night shifts, and a certain amount of overtime would be built into that schedule. And what we would do is we would change the hourly rates so that the annual salary would still be the same. As I mentioned, we recommend eliminating the assistant director and applying the overtime to a capital replacement fund. So this would be Model 1, what that would look like. It's very similar to what we have today. These are the 4 shifts. There would only be 3 people working in the office instead of 5 that you see today. And there are actually 2 positions that don't show up on here that would actually be the 2 telecommunicator positions that could be used to cover sick and vacation coverage. So that was where I was talking about the reduction of overtime. So we'd have the same 21 FT, actually, well, we have 22 now. We'd have 21 full-time equivalents with the 2 shift positions not shown. So this actually at the bottom here, again, represents, these are this is June and August of 2013. These are the calls by hour of the day. And then this would be staffing by hour of the day. So this would be 1 supervisor, all 24 hours, and that would be a working supervisor, kind of like a player coach, if you will. And then we would have 2 additional dispatchers for 12 hours, so you'd have a minimum of 3, which you currently have, although it actually gets less than 3 in some cases today, according to some of the participants in the comm center. And then you would go up to as many as 5 during the peak hours, and these would be the cross-trained telecommunicator in a TAC position. This is really probably the best option that's out there. This would be consolidation with Mercy Ambulance, and you can see it actually gives you more people per shift, actually quite a bit more depth. Basically right now, Mercy Ambulance has about 4, they have 1 full-time 24-hour position, and then they have somebody during the day. So they have about 6 people assigned to dispatch. What we would do, recommend here, because most of the calls that they run are the same calls that your fire rescue folks run on, so there's a lot of overlap there. We would recommend bringing on 4 additional positions, and then having Mercy fund those 4 positions. Now, we recommended we didn't have really good data. We know that they're sort of in the $215,000 to $225,000 a year range for their operation. So we threw out a number based on your cost of a dispatcher for 4 dispatchers, $200,000. Obviously, that's subject to negotiation if you do have a consolidated effort. But this would give us plenty of depth. You can see during the off-peak hours, you'd be as many as 5 budgeted positions, and then at peak, you'd be up to as many as 6. Now, what this would do is you could float it down probably to 3 off-peak. And by floating down, that means you would have positions that could cover for sick and vacation or training opportunities, those sorts of things. But that gives you a lot of synergy there with bringing Mercy on. So we have economic model then. Remember, we talked about the base case. Well, we went ahead and showed the economic model for Model 1 staffing and then Model 2 staffing. Basically the same variables you saw in the base case. And the base year, we used cash reserve in excess of the 12%. We applied that to capital in year 1. Deleted the assistant director position, as I mentioned. The 12% reserve is not a recurring amount. It just gets pushed forward each year. And basically what this represents, these charts here, is what the 5-year funding looks like. You already saw that. And what we showed is the solid symbols here. This is city funding, and this is county funding. The open symbols represent if you were to find another funding mechanism to bring you up to 50% of expenditures. And you, okay, when it comes back, you can see that that significantly reduces the amount that you would be funding as a partner. In fact, for a couple of years, you're actually lower than what you're funding right now. So getting you back up to that 50% level that you are required to, well, you say you're going to be in the interlocal agreement would actually look pretty good for you. It almost makes it flat funding for the next 5 years, even when you're actually changing your staffing model. So if you look at Model 2, this is the integration with Mercy Ambulance. Same sort of story here. We showed bringing you up to 50%. That would actually reduce things. If you compare these two, let me give me just a second, and I'll give you a number here. So the city contribution with Model 1, the top model there, right now you're somewhere, you'd be in the range, year 1 you'd be about $600,000. By year 5 you'd be about $850,000. If you brought your funding up to the 50% level, you'd be up to about $600,000, which is very close to what you're funding today. That's with Model 1. Model 2, in the first year, you actually go down to a little over $500,000, and you would be up to about $780,000. Or if you came up to the 50% level, you'd be about $600,000. So Model 2 actually gets you a lot more resources and is better for you financially. And again, that kind of makes sense because you've got some synergy bringing those two together that have a lot of crosswalk between them. There's a couple of final recommendations that we have relative to technology and infrastructure. First, consideration should be given to a new building, and that's really more of a longer range, probably in the 5 to 10 year range. Short term, you can make some changes to the center, including perimeter fencing, electronic access, lighting, and security, as we mentioned. Maybe some painting, maybe a little bit of a reconfiguration of the office space to provide a little bit better security or access to the floor. Let's see, there we go. This is really a big one as far as infrastructure. It's probably the most important one. Is the CAD is several generations old. Our estimated cost to upgrade that is about $250,000, which includes upgrading the software for all the mobile data terminals for your law enforcement as well as the sheriff's office. And we actually showed that in the funding model. The Zetron, that's an alerting module, and that just has to do with where things are in the comm center. They're very difficult for the dispatchers to access parts and pieces to notify units that are out there. So this just speaks to making things a little bit easier and cutting some time. Current phone system, you're probably good for about another 3 to 5 years. And that's our recommendations. Questions?
Who actually owns the building?
Jointly, city or jointly?
I think it's a joint ownership. It was a city.
It's jointly owned.
It was a city building, and I believe in the interlocal, the county or the county paid the city some amount, and it's owned jointly. That's one of those issues that, well, who really owns it? I mean, what is this entity?
So, lots of questions. A lot of work to do.
Here's a copy of the full report.
I know, I don't need a copy.
When you mention alternative funding, are we asking questions, Sam?
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
When you mention alternative funding sources, are you talking about the merging with Mercy, going up to 50%? What all are you talking about as alternative funding sources?
The short answer is yes, ma'am. Alternative funding could be anything from, developing more funding through consolidation with Mercy. It could be increasing your landline fee, which of course that's a diminishing thing even if you raise fees, so that's probably not a good way to go. The one that looks that we kind of stumbled across is that that per parcel assessment, and that's kind of a total revamp of how you fund the communication center. But it sounds kind of promising, and there's somebody that's already sort of broken the ground on that, Kenton County. So there's certainly the ability to model after somebody else, and that may be one of those. And I think they actually had a landline fee too, and they went to this per parcel assessment, did away with the landline fee. I'm not sure if they're still getting the mobile fees from the state or not at this point. But that would be another potential alternative, probably one of the better ones that might be out there.
I know there was a bill, I'm sorry,
No, go.
on 911, for the cell phone charges, but I don't think it got anywhere in the legislature, did it?
Not yet. It's, obviously there's still time, but it has not been passed yet to my knowledge.
Okay.
And 80% of 911 calls are cell phones, correct?
Huge
About,
percentage.
I think they said when we were in Frankfurt, 80%.
I was thinking it was about
are cell
that.
phones.
I think you saw, that trend is widening every year. Eventually, probably nobody's going to have a landline anymore. So.
I think it needs to be kept in mind that as an alternative to that 911 bill not passing this year, even next year, we continue to have to pay the difference out of the city and county operational budgets and pay attention to that trend line and how that is projected to grow. Question on that, even with that growth of several hundred thousand over the next few years, are you including significant funding of capital replacement in that projection?
We did put some capital funding in there in Model 1 and 2, yes.
Okay. I think that's an important thing to know because
probably not what you really
it's significant compared to what we're funding now, though.
Right, correct. You're funding nothing now, so yes. Even just if you think about, you're looking at a $1.5 million budget roughly, and you're looking at $80,000 a year recurring if you cut that assistant position, and another probably 25 to 50 if you reduce your overtime.
So we have concurrent pressures, if you will. Our revenue base dedicated for this is shrinking, putting more pressure on, if you will, general taxation of the city and county, which is arguably not growing appreciably, and we have no funding plan in place for significant capital improvement of that operation, which is a threat, obviously, to the operational capability of the center. So we've got a lot of things staring us at the same time. It's nice to have our head out of the sand, I think, and that's what this report really does. Now it becomes a matter of making tough decisions about these recommendations to try to put this place on a better operational and financial footing than what it is.
And who's responsible for making those decisions? Is it the board?
Well, the intergovernmental agreement is between the City Commission and the Fiscal Court, so ultimately it would be those two bodies.
And not the 911 board?
Board could be looked to, obviously, to provide some recommendations. There's obviously a digestion period that needs to occur here, I think, for everybody. With this, I'm pretty confident the 911 board will be taking it up in earnest very soon. We may, as a group, want to do some kind of a follow-up workshop. You as individuals may want to, spend time with the chief or I or both of us or whatever to kick some of these things around. Clearly, we need to be moving pretty quickly in some areas if we want to avoid that trend line doing what it is. And I don't know what the answer to that is going to be, because is that like another $250,000 to the city over 5 years, and we still haven't funded capital replacement adequately? So take that $250,000 and maybe add another $150,000, and then we've got the thing on firm financial footing, but we haven't yet identified where the revenue or the resources is going to come from for that.
Thank you, City Manager. That pretty well summed up with the points I was going to drive home.
Can I keep going on the operational side? I just want to mention just one other observation, and I don't mean to sound a little fired up about this, but I want to tell you this is one of the most complete reports when you talk about bang for the buck that I've seen produced by a consultant in my career, and I thank Stewart and his associates for the work that they put into it. On the operational side, and I don't want to sound critical, we are hearing that we are lacking proper direction to employees in protocols. Now that impacts not only effectiveness and outcomes in the fields, in the field, but it impacts the use of resources and whether we're able to be efficient or not, whether it's in how much we dispatch or how many people we have working over there. This report hits all of that, folks. There's a lot to digest here, and we need to take these recommendations very seriously. Now I'll be quiet.
Well, that was my question is for looking at this environment, and you talk about folks on the phone directing traffic, taking those calls properly. Are our guys properly trained in this current environment?
And equipped.
That's a pretty loaded question. There's a lot of parts and pieces to that. I think there's a lot of pieces. You know, one is the computer-aided dispatch software is out of date, so they're already starting from a little bit of a liability perspective in terms of time and being able to process information and get information out. You have had some turnover there. You don't have good agency protocols, and the problem there is you can have a real experienced dispatcher, and they may, just because they know, you know, this agency or that agency and kind of what they like to do, and they've heard a lot of different kinds of calls, they may handle a call a little bit better than perhaps somebody that's brand new. But that's not the way you should run things. The way you should run things, and this is what we recommend, is that you know, each agency sit down and they work on their own, you know, how do they want to have their units dispatched? What do they want to go to? And really, you ought to have law enforcement sitting down and kind of looking at, you know, you shouldn't, a SWAT incident shouldn't get different resources in the city or county. It shouldn't matter. You know, you should respond to things similarly. Same thing with fire responses. Same thing with medical responses. One of the things we talked about in there is there are a set of commercially available protocols that are out there. It started with the emergency medical field called emergency medical dispatching, priority dispatching, and basically what that is, it's kind of a set of cards essentially. It used to be cards, now it's all digital that you go through. You know, hello caller, what's your emergency? Oh, well, you know, Johnny's having a, you know, whatever he's having, you know, a seizure. Okay, well, you ask this question, yes or no. You ask this question, yes or no. And then that determines the priority of the incident and what we need to send. They can actually talk to the complainant about, you know, give a little bit of first aid over the phone. And then in the meantime, according to agency dispatch protocols that we don't really fully have yet, you know, then they go and they put those in place. And that way then, now you have something that you can train the dispatcher. So a brand new dispatcher, you know, a 5-year dispatcher, 10-year dispatcher are all doing things exactly the same way every time. And that's, so it's a little bit more than just a, you know, yes or no question.
No, that's exactly the answer that I was looking for. And when you think about the job that these dispatchers, I mean, those are emergency calls.
Yes.
And those questions are very important to determine what to do next.
Well, I think it needs to be a guide. I mean, I actually had to call 911 last week. I heard a wreck outside the building, ran out and called 911 for help on what to do. And I expected, you know, you need to be led through because you're standing there looking at a car blocking a road, glass everywhere. Somebody's saying, well, they don't really need an ambulance, but it's very obvious they couldn't get out of the car by themselves. They needed help to get out of the car, so they just need to be able to guide you through that, and I think they all need to be trained to help you. The person that's called them with
part
that.
of what, you know, what this does here, particularly the consolidation, the Model 2, is it gives you a little bit more depth, and then also taking out the animal control, you know, because that is a workload on there that really probably shouldn't be there. That gives you some more depth so that you can have people, you know, sort of training instead of actively dispatching, you know, and your supervisor can kind of sit back as a player coach. Hey, this person needs a little bit more, you know, guidance and training on this, so I can pull them aside, you know, or I can maybe listen in on their calls and, you know, and kind of help them out. I mean, that I don't think people really appreciate how critical, you know, that initial interaction with that caller on the phone is. Just like you said, you know, you're not an EMS professional or a medical professional or whatever. In most cases, when you call, you know, you're upset. You don't know what's going on. You're trying to get information. You know, I mean, you're out there. You want people there right now. That call, that person on the other end of that line is vital to that call and getting you calmed down so they can get the right information so they can send the right resources each and every time. And it takes a lot more than just, you know, a trained person. I mean, it takes, you know, the CAD system. It needs to be up to date. It needs to be able to you know, process information correctly. They need to be able to dispatch. You need a radio set. You know, there's a lot of things that go into that. I can talk on this all day. I'm sorry. I'll stop now.
No,
If you know about this one, Steve,
Well,
it was right by you.
Oh, it was? No, I don't. But let me say something about our personnel here, because I don't want them to get lost in this. We're talking about the process here. We're not talking about the level of effort of the people that we have.
Right.
And I know you all know that, but I'd be remiss if I just didn't say it out loud. We got good folks over there. They have a tremendous workload, and they're doing the best with what they have.
Right.
Obviously, we need to put something in place that's going to make the process better for them, and that's where we're lacking. To the point of what the city manager was making earlier, decision points are coming fast and furious here. We are without a director right now. We are, as a board, are planning to meet in 2 weeks to try to gather what our recommendations are going to be to the two governing bodies as a result of the report, to what the board's going to recommend. And to that point, I would ask that you all put this on some kind of schedule for you all to help us get to these decisions in a timely manner. We're starting budget. Also, as we speak, we're all in the middle of the budget. 911's right there with the rest of the city departments and the county agencies as well. And these things are going to impact some of those budget figures for this upcoming year. So I'm not trying to fast track it or put pressure on you to get it done, but I just want you to understand that those decision points are out there. We have deliberately not hired a director to this point since the one left the position for the purpose of gathering this report and seeing what recommendations. We didn't want to handcuff a new person coming in there not knowing what we were going to do next.
Well, we didn't want to sell ourselves short either, because we want to profile that somewhat around the challenges associated with this report. We need to match that up with the individual that takes the helm, clearly.
So there's several key elements here, and we've not hired that director so that we can, see what the decision points are, and the new person knows what they're getting into, and we know what we're expecting of them. So I leave you with that thought as we end the presentation, if you don't have any other questions.
You guys need to get across the street, don't
We have to go across the street now.
And I know you do have to go, but I just want to say to the commission, we really need to commend Chief Kyle and the city manager. This is a very difficult process to get your arms around, and the city manager and Chief Kyle took the lead in finding Almont and stepping up to the plate and offering some solutions to something that the board was really struggling with. Everyone was coming at it and attacking the problem from a lot of different areas, I guess. And, because in the county, the sheriff's department will do things their way, no differently than county government does things different than city government. And there's, I guess you, Barnhill, and myself are primarily the only representatives from the city.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other elected officials from the county on there. So it's a very, it works together, but there are a lot of different approaches to everything, and it's difficult to get your arms around.
Well,
the city manager and Chief Kyle really stepped up to the plate.
It's one of those areas where you really see those things come to the forefront.
That's right.
Because, it's city and county, obviously different entities, obviously have different ways that they do things. And, 911 is the linchpin of what emergency responders do. If we don't have that working right, we can't get to where we need to go. If we fail at nothing else, we can't fail at that.
Right.
Well,
That's where it starts.
well, everybody agree in the room that we need to make sure that those dispatchers, they got the tools to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
We can agree on that. So we need to identify that and let that be the forward thinking in our minds.
That's right.
Yeah, we do things differently, but a carpenter needs a hammer.
That's right.
It is a life safety issue.
Right.
There's
It
no
really
other
is.
way to look at it.
That's right. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. So do you want us just to meet with Chief Kyle and?
I would encourage you, if you have the time individually, because, well, first attempt to read the whole report cover to cover. You're going to have a lot more questions. It's detailed, but it's extremely well illustrated, I think. It just takes time, and feel free to meet with Steve, I, or whomever in the interim between now and when the board pulls its recommendations together. We would look forward to that, would like that opportunity to visit with each of you.
Okay.
And if you want to do a workshop at any point, we can do that too.
I think we probably should do another one.
Yeah. I'm just not sure if that should occur before the 911 board pulls a recommendation. I would think after, probably. Yeah.
Don't you all think after?
Yeah.
Workshop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sandra, could you take over here for just a minute? Minutes. Right back.
Commissioner Abraham?
I move that the reading of minutes for March 11, 2014 and March 18, 2014 City Commission meeting be waived, and that the minutes of said meetings prepared by the city clerk be approved as written.
Second.
Any discussion? City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kaler.
Okay, we'll move to appointments. I believe I'll read this one first.
Yes.
Whereas, subject to the approval of the Board of Commissioners, Mayor Kaler hereby appoints Bill Griggs and Martin Mundy as members of the Paducah Golf Commission. Their terms will expire March 26, 2018.
I move that the Board of Commissioners approve the action of Mayor Kaler in reappointing Bill Griggs and Martin Mundy as members of the Paducah Golf Commission.
Second.
All right, any discussion? City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Aye. Okay, next we'll move to motions. Commissioner Rhodes.
Move that the following documents be received and filed. Documents, certificates of liability, insurance, Ohio Machinery Company Incorporated, Raymond Culp Construction, Mertco Incorporated, right-of-way for Cleaver Construction Company Incorporated, deed of conveyance, Independent Bank Shares, Inc., agreements and contracts, Greenway Village subdivision Phase 1 modification to irrevocable letter of credit on number 7073, agreement with Pepsi Mid-America for exclusive beverage and snack provider service in the Paducah Parks facilities, Edwin J. Paxton Park financial statements for January through December 2013, Market House Theater of Paducah, Kentucky Incorporated financial statements for years ended June 30th, 2012 and 2011, Market House Theater of Paducah, Kentucky Incorporated financial statements for years ended June 30th, 2013 and 2012. Luther F. Carson Forver Center financial statements for years ended June 30th, 2011 and 2012. Bids for engineering public works, rear packer refuse collection truck, Tag Truck Center, Stringfellow Incorporated, Tag Truck Center denotes winning bid.
Second.
Any discussion? City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Aye. Commissioner Rhodes, will you get the next motion out of my book and read it, please?
All right.
On personnel actions?
Okay. Upon the recommendation of City Manager, the Board of Commissioners of the City of Paducah order that the personal changes on the attached list be approved.
Second.
Any Cindy? Okay, no. Any discussion? City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Kaler.
Aye. So we're down to personnel. Here.
This one right here.
Commissioner Abraham, please.
I move that a municipal order entitled, "A Municipal Order Authorizing the Mayor to Execute a 2014-2015 Kentucky Household Hazard Waste Grant Application and all documents necessary through the Kentucky Division of Waste Management in the amount of $43,912.50 to assist in the funding the city and county annual cleanup day be adopted."
Second.
Okay. Do we have someone here to talk on this tonight?
Cheryl?
As Commissioner said, this grant funds our annual household cleanup day. They're held in April of every year. And the Engineering and Public Works Department is requesting $43,912.50 in grant funds. That has a 25% cash or in-kind match of 25% and $14,637.50 for a total project cost of $55,000. This is a joint project with the county and fiscal courts, so an interlocal agreement will have to be executed if funded. I just need authorization for the mayor to execute a grant application. All right. So,
Thank you. Any discussions or questions for Cheryl?
We have a date on that,
the due date for the grant application,
or the cleanup date?
for the cleanup date in 2015, is it always April 12th? It's April 12th this year. It's April 12th of this year,
Okay.
from 7 to 2:30, I believe.
And they start lining up at 3 in the morning.
Yes, they do. Get there early. I just want to wait in line. That's my understanding. But the date for 2015 has not been set, but like she said, it's usually the second Saturday, somewhere around in there.
And you can take paint cans,
There's
kinds
a
of-
wide variety of items that they will take.
medications.
Police department will do medications, pickups that day, I believe, and disposal of those. But household hazardous chemicals, it's just any kind of chemical you have laying around your house, they'll take. You'll just need to make sure if you have any lead-based paint or asbestos or anything like that, you need to let them know what that is so they can dispose of it properly.
Okay.
Cheryl, let me, I guess I do this. So 60% of the participants are from the county, and 32% of the participants to the dump day are from the city, and we divide it half and half.
That's my understanding.
Is there a reason for that? I mean, I guess we just help support the county. Okay. Anyway, I just had to ask. I'm sorry.
Live.
That fluctuates from one year to the next as well. This year it could be completely different, but it
It
doesn't.
seemed like last year was about this. I think I asked this question last year also.
Oh, okay. Well,
Do you have anything to say, Steve?
No, I was just going to come up and help if we need to expand on
Okay.
the question.
All right. City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kayler.
Aye. Commissioner Galt, please.
I move that a municipal order entitled, a municipal order approving the Paducah Police Department to partner with Merriman House Domestic Crisis Center for application for a Mutual of America Community Partnership Award in the amount of $25,000 for the Hope Line Drive and the Lethality Assessment Program be adopted.
Second.
Cheryl?
this is not a grant application. I want to stress that. It is an award application where if the Paducah Police Department and the Merriman House are awarded, they will receive a $25,000 award plus a documentary of their program. The Merriman House Domestic Crisis Center, in partnership with the Paducah Police Department, they've had an alliance between these two agencies since 1978 to predict the likelihood of future extreme violence and homicide in domestic relationships. And if awarded, these two agencies will split their award. And I just need authorization from the city to allow the Paducah Police Department to submit this award application. Merriman House is actually preparing the application.
Okay.
Any discussion? City Clerk?
Go for it.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kayler.
Aye. Commissioner Rhodes, please.
Okay, I move that a municipal order entitled, a municipal order adopting City of Paducah, Kentucky Public Housing Agency Annual Plan for Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program for fiscal year 2014 be adopted.
Second.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, sir.
I did prepare for you all. You don't have it in the packet, but it's kind of an update from last year. As you recall, we did have a federal sequester that effectively cut funds across the board to all housing agencies and to all federal agencies in the United States. So that's kind of a recap of what happened last year, which was a rough year. But what you have in front of you to approve is our annual plan, which we're mandated to update each year. Do you have any questions over it? All the three things that you have to pass kind of interlock with each other.
And this is something you do every year.
Yes.
Any questions for Danny?
Just looking at that waiting list, man. These 666 families on the waiting list. It's a lot of people.
Yes, it is.
Families. It's a lot of families.
What's the average weight time? Do you know, Danny?
I can't even tell you right now because our waiting list has been closed since November of 2012. And we had 666 on the waiting list as of that date, and we just took 25 off. So right now, wait period is non-describable at this point.
Would there still be that many persons on the wait list? Or, I mean, I guess some have fallen off, moved away.
Out of the, if you gauge this by the 25 we went down, we've gotten 16 or 17 responses. So some of them have moved, some of them have no longer interested or in other housing situations. So I would venture to guess about a third will not respond or will not take the assistance when offered. So in actuality, we've probably got active applicants about 400, something along that line.
And Section 8 housing can be anywhere in the city.
Anywhere in the city or county.
It's not in a certain location. It's
No,
all
it's we have units in every census tract in McCracken County.
All right. City Clerk.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Kayler?
Aye. Commissioner Wilson, please.
I move that a municipal order entitled, "A Municipal Order Adopting Revisions of the Utility Allowances for the Section 8 Housing Program as required by the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as revised," be adopted.
Seconded.
Utility allowances, as you can see, we've had a very expensive year in terms of utilities. Gases went up, sewer, water, propane, electricity, all have increased. Electricity has increased 30%. That was our biggest increase. The way the utilities tie into our program is that we have to make an allowance for tenant-supplied utilities, and it also works in terms of the cost or the rent that we set for the landlord. The higher the utility allowance, the less rent we can allow a landlord. So as cost goes up, utilities goes up, everything goes up, the landlord actually is the loser in the equation because we have to take that cost out of the gross rent or out of the payment standard, which is the limitation. So in making these adjustments, which we're mandated to do every year to keep up with the cost, actual cost of utilities, landlords tend to suffer, and tenants tend to suffer because they cannot find the units that are affordable to them within the marketplace. So we're making another change as we go forward with your next approval to adjust our limitation to buffer that effect on the rent and on the ability for our clients to find suitable housing. But we did have a very rough year in terms of utilities.
I think we all have.
Yes.
All right. City Clerk.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Kayler?
Aye. Commissioner Abraham, please.
I move that a municipal order entitled "A Municipal Order Adopting the City of Paducah, Kentucky, Paducah Housing Agency Revised Administrative Plan for Section 8 Houses" be adopted.
Second.
Okay, on this one, we are, the federal government issues a fair market rent. That's published in the Federal Register. The fair market rent is based at the 45th percentile of rents. That means 55% of the rents in the area are above that limitation. Each housing agency has the ability to set their payment standard, which is the rent limitation, at an amount that does not exceed 10% over or above the published fair market rent. We have opted to increase our payment standard to 5% above the fair market rent, specifically to buffer the increase of the utilities. That's one of the points on there. A couple other things we've done this year. We've established a waiting list or participant selection list, and we did that to appease HUD Louisville in terms of fair housing issues. All of our local preferences were not weighted, so everyone came in at the same weight or the same selection. Now we went to a weighted selection process where certain groups of individuals receive preference over other groups of individuals, and that specifically addresses some fair housing issues at the HUD level. The third thing, we addressed the eligibility of FSS participants, family self-sufficiency participants. Once you complete our program, then you're not allowed to get back into the program for a 2-year period, which is kind of standard across the board of Section 8 agencies. And we had to establish an asset exclusion policy where we have a home ownership program, and the asset of that property is disregarded for the first 5 years that they purchase, and then after 5 years we have to assess the asset, basically. And assets is a part of income with the Section 8 program, so there's a policy in there for that, and just a statement of our supported programs, which includes the Scholar House and the Merriman House housing program.
Could you give me an example of that weighted?
Okay. There is a local preference that each agency establishes. Once we get applicants on the waiting list, they're placed on the waiting list by date of application. With this waiting list or tenant preference, the placement on the waiting list is by category, not particular. Everyone is on the same list in terms of time of application. The weighted waiting list, the top would be victims of domestic violence. That would be our top preference, or if someone came in victim of domestic violence, they would go to the top of the waiting list, regardless of their date of application. The second is applicants that are currently full-time students, and that takes care of the Scholar House situation and any other full-time student per se. The third category is federally declared disaster areas or displacement by governmental action. That is the third category. The fourth category would be previously assisted families that we've had to terminate because of lack of funds, or the housing authority has to terminate because of lack of funds. That's the next one. And the last category is the working families and elderly and disabled. And then all other families fall below that. So it's a categorization of applicants according to certain situations. And we anticipate it not to make a tremendous impact with the wait period. There's a couple of other agencies. I think Kentucky Housing Corporation has went to a weighted tenant preference. Lexington and Louisville also to address some fair housing issues that HUD had with those particular agencies. They have not addressed us per se, but I feel like that we're in the same situation as Kentucky Housing, Lexington, and Louisville, specifically because of our participation with the Scholar House situation. And this is what spurred it on. They have scholar houses in those areas, and they were housing scholar house applicants, taking them off the waiting list before someone else, and they've adjusted their tenant selection policy to include the weighted policy as we've done here. So I think this will address any fair housing issues that HUD has before they actually examine us for that situation.
Thanks. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Danny. Always do a great job.
Thank you.
City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kayler.
Aye. Okay, we'll go to ordinance's adoption. Commissioner Galt, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance accepting the bid of Central Paving Company for compost grinding of tree debris and yard waste, and authorizing the mayor to execute a contract for same. This ordinance is summarized as follows: that the city accepts the bid of Central Paving Company for compost grinding and tree debris and yard waste in the amount of $524 per hour for the remaining portion of 2014 calendar year, and with 3 optional 1-year term renewals, and authorizes the mayor to execute a contract for same.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, we've already discussed these, so City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kayler.
Aye. Commissioner Rhodes, please.
All right. I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing the finance director to pay L3 Communications Mobile Vision for the sole source purchase of digital in-car cameras and a new server with the required software and installation to be used by the Paducah Police Department, and authorizing the mayor to execute all documents relating to same. This ordinance is summarized as follows: that the City of Paducah hereby authorizes the finance director to make payments to L3 Communications Mobile Vision in the amount of $25,233 for the purchase of 2 digital in-car cameras, a new server, software, and installation to be used by the Paducah Police Department, and authorizes the mayor to execute all documents relating to same.
Second.
City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kayler.
Aye. Okay, Commissioner, am I to you, Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Okay.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing and approving the acquisition of real property located at 5455 Commerce Drive, Paducah-McCracken County, Kentucky, and assumption of the lease agreement with Mako Organics Corporation for the improvement of a public project. This ordinance is summarized as follows. In this ordinance, the City of Paducah approves the acquisition of an undivided 1/2 interest in the real property located at 5455 Commerce Drive, Paducah, Kentucky, and the assumption of the lease obligations of Paducah-McCracken County Industrial Development Authority under the lease agreement dated May 31st, 2013 with Mako Organics Corporation. This ordinance further authorizes the mayor of the City of Paducah, Kentucky to execute a general warranty deed and assignment agreement to accomplish and consummate the acquisition of the property.
Seconded.
Okay.
Should I note I also serve on the Paducah-McCracken County Industrial Development Authority as appointed by the judge?
I'm sorry, what?
Just to note, I also serve on the Paducah-McCracken County Industrial Development Authority appointed by the judge.
Okay. City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kayler.
Aye. Commissioner Abraham, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Paducah, Kentucky approving and authorizing the execution of an interlocal cooperative agreement among the City of Paducah, Kentucky, the County of McCracken, Kentucky, and GPEDC Incorporated. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance authorizes the City of Paducah, Kentucky to approve and enter into an interlocal cooperative agreement between the City of Paducah, Kentucky and the County of McCracken, Kentucky, and GPEDC Incorporated pursuant to Section 65.210 to 65.300, exclusive of the Kentucky Revised Statute as amended, the Interlocal Act. The ordinance approves the form of the interlocal cooperative agreement presented to the Board of Commissioners of the city with such changes therein, and shall not be adverse to the city and may be approved by the mayor. The interlocal cooperative agreement sets forth the common plan of construction that the City of Paducah and the County of McCracken and GPEDC Incorporated will follow together to undertake the construction of project improvements to the building and site suited at 5455 Commerce Drive, Paducah-McCracken County, Kentucky, in the most cost-effective manner pursuant to this agreement and the Interlocal Act for a rental agreement with Mako Organics Corporation.
Second.
So it's good to have this moving along and have some more employment in Paducah and have a beautiful new building out in the industrial park.
Yeah, the site plan is under review, and I think final touches are being put on the documents to make them ready to go to bid on a construction contract fairly soon. So everything's going well.
Good. Okay, City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kayler.
Aye. Ordinance introduction. We do not vote on these tonight. So Commissioner Galt, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing the sale of municipally owned real property located at 510 through 514 Broadway in Paducah to the Columbia Club, Inc., for purposes of redevelop and revitalization. This ordinance is summarized as follows. In this ordinance of the City of Paducah, City declares city-owned real property located at 510 through 514 Broadway in Paducah-McCracken County, Kentucky, upon which is situated the Columbia Theater, a surplus property, and authorizes the sale of the surplus property to the Columbia Club, Inc., a Kentucky nonprofit corporation in accordance with the requirements of KRS 82.083 and the sealed bidding procedure set forth in the City of Paducah Codes of Ordinance Section 2-668, and pursuant to the terms of the Memorandum of Understanding among the City and the Columbia Club, Inc., for purposes of redevelopment and revitalization of the Columbia Theater. This ordinance further authorizes the mayor of the City of Paducah, Kentucky, to execute and deliver a deed of conveyance of the surplus property and the Memorandum of Understanding.
Second.
Steve?
Good evening.
Aye.
The Columbia Club, in partnership with the City of Paducah, wishes to apply for a brownfield grant through the Kentucky Department of Environmental Protection in the amount of $50,000 with a 20% match of $10,000. The city cannot be the applicant because we did not do a Phase 1 environmental before we purchased the property. The attached MOU defines ownership responsibilities, the city's economic incentive, insurance requirements, including the city providing property insurance and the Columbia Club providing general liability insurance. Reversion language and general maintenance responsibilities are also included in the MOU. Landy's here representing Columbia Club if you have any questions concerning the proposal packet that was submitted. And also Cheryl's here to discuss the brownfield grant if you have any questions as it relates to that.
Does anyone have any question?
I don't have any questions.
Just good to have it moving along. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love that commercial. I love the commercial. The little girl standing on the, yeah, That's pretty nice.
Commissioner Rhodes, please.
All right. Move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to execute change order number 1 with ICA Engineering Incorporated, FKA Florence and Hutchison, for the Knoll Park Pool renovation project. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The mayor is hereby authorized and direct to execute change order number 2 in the amount of $13,230 to pay for additional construction and engineering services for completion of the Noble Park Pool renovation project, increasing the total cost contract to $197,425.
Second.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is the final bill of the engineering bill on the project. We're glad to get this wrapped up. This helped us get through the superintendents of the project got us to the mitigation where we had the settlement there. So this was helpful in drawing that conclusion. So.
Okay. Good to have that done.
We'll probably have one more small one, but it won't be engineering.
Okay.
And we're even not sure of that at this point.
All right. Commissioner Wilson, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance accepting the bid for sale to the city of one rear Packer refuse collection truck and authorizing the mayor to execute a contract for same. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The City of Paducah accepts the bid of Tag Truck Center, LLC, in the amount of $157,677 for sale to the city of one rear Packer refuse collection truck for use by the Solid Waste Division of the Public Works Department and authorizes the mayor to execute a contract for same.
Second. That's how I do that.
Mayor, Commission, this is just a continuation of our fleet purchases for fiscal year 2014.
Okay. Any questions for Rick?
I guess this is the local tag truck
Yes.
center.
And it's the funding for this is paid for not through any general fund monies, but the funding comes from the rates we receive from the ratepayers on the refuse collection. It's one of our enterprise funds in the city of Paducah, so that's something that's may be of interest to you all as well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Abraham, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to execute addendum number 2 to the agreement to employ Jeffrey A. Peterson as Paducah City Manager. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The city hereby approves the addendum to the employment agreement with Jeffrey Peterson and authorizing the mayor to execute said addendum. The changes are as follows. Term of agreement increase effective December 7th, 2013 to December 7th, 2016, a salary increase to $150,000 annually, and an increase in annual vacation to 20 days.
Second.
Okay. We recently did a review of the city manager's contract, and I think we were all very positive on that review for the city manager's contract. We feel that he does a great job for us. We do appreciate you, and feel that, you know, your continuance here in the city of Paducah is important to us as well as the community.
Thank you. Appreciate the confidence.
Thank you. Right. Do we have a city manager's report?
A couple of things. The solid waste truck reminded me, Rick and I took a trip over to Cape Girardeau a week or two ago in our efforts to look at modeling a recycling program to include curbside collection at the Commission's direction. And we'd known that Cape Girardeau was in the recycling program from curbside all the way to marketing at one time, and we knew that they had pulled back a little bit and outsourced the tail end of that. We were curious about that and went over there, and it was a very enlightening trip and productive, and I don't want to say we're prepared to stop based on what we saw there, but I think we saw a model that's very attractive in many respects. I think what was most, well, there are a lot of things that I was impressed about, but one of them was they made the decision when they started curbside to do it in the most effective and efficient manner they could. And they made some investment to set up to do it right. But I think it was done for all the right reasons, and I think at least some of the values that they applied to that we can take a look at and learn and listen, learn from and listen to, or listen to and learn from, I guess is the correct order on that. I might mention we had no idea. We knew that they contracted with a private company to receive recyclables and transport them to a center for processing. We didn't know that they were very, their timing is very close to ours in that they are actually very soon going to be issuing a new RFP for that service. So there again, there's a resource there that we can learn from, and maybe not just going backwards, but maybe going forward with respect to what they're looking at achieving through the RFP process for the handling of recyclables as one option in a model there. So something else I was going to mention that I forgot. I do want to mention that Mayor Kaler, myself, and Commissioner Rhodes met with a group of individuals Monday morning at their request and received a presentation relative to barbecue on the river. My comments on that are going to be brief and to the point that there were some suggestions for some questions that the city should look into. I will say that at this point in time what we are looking into is subsequent to actions taken by the City Commission, I believe back in 2009 and 2010, by which the conduct of Barbecue on the River came under Barbecue on the River, Inc. The question I think that is most pertinent to the issue is exactly what, if any, responsibilities or rights to that festival the city retained from those actions that it took. So that is what is being researched, and that's the summation of what I'm prepared to comment on tonight regarding that submission that we received Monday.
And I would like to ask the city manager, and you all are welcome to join in on this too, to look at us formulating an MOU that defines the expectations and the means of oversight that use in-kind or cash for such events that benefit the public in the city of Paducah. And that's many. I mean, there are many things that fall under that umbrella that I think we could define a little bit more. We could tighten up a little bit more than we have right now. And so I
think you're looking at some linkage between what we're providing and what the outcome is. It's of public benefit. I think that's a great idea, provided there's some threshold there.
Right.
If we haul one
well,
set
you know,
of
like
barricades a block or something, that maybe that wouldn't require. But I'm just kind of.
You know, like some give us an audit, some don't.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of all over the place. And I think if we had a pretty well defined, expectation.
Yeah, and I think
everyone could abide by.
I think the key there has to be what is the outcome that is being represented to be able to be achieved in part through our assistant, and it's not always a financial audit that's the best way to determine that. Let's be clear about that. So it may be that, it may be any other of a number of things. The key being to have something there that is a measure of the outcome that is presented to us as requiring of some assistance from the city.
I mean, it has to be flexible to fit this situation.
Yeah. One other thing, next Tuesday night is a workshop night. We don't have anything planned as of right now. It is spring break, and it's not unusual for the commission to not meet during that week. So unless something comes up unanticipated, it would be my anticipation tonight that we would not have a need for a meeting next Tuesday.
Okay. Any commissioner comments?
In the notes from Pam, I read something about Al Roker
Yeah.
and possibility maybe Paducah being spotlighted for some type of artist reality show. That's all in the, the pictures being put together. But I thought I always thought our Roker just pointing to the weather map. Obviously, he's got a lot more going on than that. So it was interesting to read that. Yeah. Thank you again for those notes, memos and notes. They come in handy. They really do.
And Pam, did you have the meeting with the movie producer? Did you? The phone call. They didn't come by. And is it going to work out for them to use this? So they're going to do their audition here in the City Commission chambers. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it's a movie that's being made in, what, Richard?
I'm just looking at my colleague over there.
I'm laughing at Richard because I got a phone call also from the Al Roker group, and they wanted to know about, Lower Town and all that. And I kept thinking to myself as I'm telling this lady what she needs to know about, don't you guys do weather? And it was really confusing, when you're trying to kind of put it all together because you just don't expect it. So I supplied names and numbers. I was sort of an operator.
All right.
An operator, on the telephone.
If there's no more, then meeting's adjourned.
So, executive session?